Hi, hi, Jeff.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Look, we have some beautiful weather over there.
Yeah, actually, now it's nice, but it was quite challenging during the morning. We had a few rains here, and it was very, very cloudy and dark, actually.
Well,
But
it
now
worked out
looks,
perfectly.
yeah, now looks perfect, actually. Yes.
So let's start with you. Tell us your name and what you do at Royal Tokai and how you got there. I like to know how people got into the wine game. Some inherited it, some had a dream since forever, some fell into it. So I'd like to hear your story too.
Yeah. I don't know if the wind it's not too disturbing. It's okay. Okay. Great. So my name is Zoltán Kovács. I'm the winery director here at the Royal Tokai. And actually, I came from a viticulturist background. I'm originally from Transylvania. You
Oh,
know, from where Count Dracula comes. So my family, parents, sisters still live there. My father was viticulturist as well. He was working during the communist period for an estate research, viticulture research institute in Transylvania, actually. Anyway, I decided to follow his path, and I followed my studies in Budapest. And right after, I joined a smaller company right in the wine region. It was a South African investment in Tayo, and after being there for 7 years, I joined a bigger company who belongs to the AXA Millésime company. Is Stoker, and from 1st of January, I joined the Royal Tokai team as general manager of the winery. Actually, so by by so I graduated as a viticulturist and enologist in Budapest to the university with the same name, actually.
okay. So tell us where we are. Can you turn the camera around and show?
Yes, I will switch to another view if I maybe this one.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So we are in the Tokaji region, village of Mad. You can see down there,
Oh, yeah.
and yes, and we are on the top of the iconic single vineyard, one of our iconic single vineyards, Saint Thomas, with a very characteristic reddish soil. So the altitude here on the top of the Saint Thomas is about 210, 15 meters. And just to localize a bit the wine region, you can see on far, you can see the Zemplin Mountains, the
Okay.
woody hills there actually, very old mountains, 2, 3 million years ago. Due to volcanic activity, they appeared, but now they actually border the wine region from north and protect against the chilly winds from the Carpathians. So very,
Oh,
very important protection gave by those hills. The maximum altitude it's 600, 700 meters, so not higher. And the chilly winds comes from north, from the Carpathians, which are in Slovakia and Poland. So that's
now,
yes.
chili wind figure in? I'm always fascinated. Like, so botrytis is the noble rot behind the sweet wine of Tokai. Where
Yeah.
does the combination of cool and come from?
So actually, chilly winds, it means mainly in winter. So we are protected against frost and frost from spring actually, which also protects. So
Okay.
it protects the vineyard and the vine region to have a more mild climate actually for us. I will tell you a bit
Gotcha.
more about botrytis and these factors a bit later. So
So
from
then,
southwest we have the Great Hungarian Plain. southwest, it is flat, flat, flat down to the Balkans, actually. No hills, no nothing. And from there we got the good weather, and very often during this part of the vegetation, some heavy rains actually. They come only from there, and the good weather during autumn helps us with the shriveling of the berries. Very, very important. And on the northeast, you can see far away is the Tokaji Mount.
Okay.
There. And on the other side of the Tokaji Mount, we have two rivers, the Bodrog and the Tisza. Tisza being the second biggest river of Hungary, which crosses the Great Hungarian Plain afterwards. And from there, we got the moist necessary during autumn time for the botrytis. But this moist is very often is due to the late summer and early fall rains as well, which help with the botrytization. So these are crucial to have those rains or the proximity of the rivers actually.
So would you want to give a history of wine in Hungary? Because it has changed a lot in the last few years, but maybe why Tokaji was so famous, why the kings and emperors wanted it, a little bit of history, and then what's been going on lately in Hungary?
Yes, so actually the first signs of wines, cultivated wines in the wine region date back to the 11th century actually. We have notices in all the historical books that even in this plot of St. Thomas, single vineyard in 1200 or 20 something, the Roman Catholic Church had vineyards in the St. Thomas. And later on, as everywhere, it started a more widely cultivation of the vines. And in the 17th century, the Rákóczi family, who was the richest family in this part of Hungary, and actually the whole wine region and even bigger area belonged to them, they started to classify. They started to make notes about the different single vineyards. And the first written classification was made in Latin, actually, that time. From 1732 till 1737 was made a classification of the wine region, where first, second, and third growth single vineyards were mentioned in that big book. We have a copy in the office. Actually, it was reedited 2 years ago. It's in Latin, but you can pick up all the information you need about our first growth. And a bit later, 20 years later or 15 years later, Maria Theresa, the empress of the Habsburgs, she also had some vineyards here in the wine region on the southern slopes of the Tokaji Mount, called Mézesmáj single vineyard. So according that classification made in 1749, Mézesmáj and another single vineyard called Szarvas, deer, actually, were classified great first growth, actually. And on the St. Thomas, the company Royal Tokaji also has a nice amount of place, actually 11 hectares we cultivate there. So these are and then step by step, because of the quality of the wines and the quality of the technology, and because sweet wines were very appreciated those days when sugar did not exist, actually, the fame of the wine became more and more bigger. Very often, Hungarian politicians, they use the Tokaji wine to sustain their political agreements with the different states. the Catherine the Great, the Tsarin of Russia, she had here in Tokaji a garrison of Cossacks, securing her Tokaji wine to the way to St. Petersburg. So American President Jefferson also, he bought Tokaji wine, and he had in his collection wines from Tokaji. Well, so we arrived in the beginning of the 20th century, and at the end of 19th century, when Tokaji wine actually was one of the most expensivest wine among the exported or sold wines on the international market. There were articles in USA saying that people are trying to make something similar to Tokaji, to make a fake Tokaji, which is less expensive, because they would like to get that taste and more cheaper way. So, but then, as many times during Hungarian history, it came something and ruined a bit our fame. It was the period of communism, when actually not the quality but quantity was the focus, and actually the proximity of the Soviet Union was fatal for the wine region. So only quantity, quantity, quantity. Nobody cared about quality. Even actually, there were some lots, even during those days, they were very good, very nice. You can taste them, enjoy them, but the big quantity was just sell something to them. And we arrived after 50 years of communism in the beginning of the 90s, when everything changed. The Iron Curtain fall down, and a lot of people, they started their own new businesses. We had people like Hugh Johnson, for example. It's the Royal Tokaji history, actually. He had a dream, let's say, like this he visited many times this region of Hungary in the 70s, 80s, and he went back to UK with fabulous tastings and all sort of dreams about Tokaji wines, and he decided that if he can, one time he will come back and set up a company. So after the falling of communism, he felt his time arrived, actually, and he had some Danish friends and who was interested in investing in the wine region. They came to Mad. They joined 62 small producers here in Mad, and they all together they decided to build up a company, a sort of cooperative in the beginning. So the small producers, they apported to the company their vineyards, actually, and then everything started with the money of the investors. And then the company had the possibility later on to buy the land in 93, 94. And after the Danish investor came some English investor. And from 2007, 2008, finally arrived our investor, our owner, which is a family from UK. Mr. Damon De Laszlo is the head of the family, with a Hungarian background. His grandfather was an acclaimed Hungarian portrait painter at the end of the 19th, beginning of 20th century, actually. And wow. He decided to buy the company, and he started huge investments here in Mad, actually, by rebuilding the cellar. I try to focus on the cellar. Maybe I can. Oops.
Just beautiful. Oh, wow.
You can see those
white
buildings there down there?
Yeah.
So that's the cellar, actually, from the Saint Thomas. And we made also some replantings here. And today we have a very modern cellar where we can work properly, making the high quality wines. And altogether, we own 108 hectares here in the wine region, of which about 57 are first growth. And this gives actually us the base to make our worldwide known wines, actually the whole range of the Tokaji wines actually.
And I want to ask you about how actually the sweet wine is made, but more and more we're seeing dry ferment wine over here in the States. Can you talk about those two things a little bit?
Yes. So Royal Tokaji, when the company was set, decided to produce only sweet wines. Actually, being in Tokaji, that was the goal. And from 1990, when our first vintage was released, till 2002, 2003, let's say, we produced only sweet wines. And we focused on in the beginning, and that was the thing which makes us very different to the others. We re-implanted or we took back the notions of the single vineyard in sweet wines as well. So we started with single vineyard also wines, so single vineyard sweet wines from our great first growth and the second growth. So Mézesmány, Nyulászó, Szent Tamás, Becsek, and Bírsalmás. Until 2003, we kept only making sweet wines actually, and 5 and 6 Putonyos Assus. The first late harvest came in 2002, and the first dry wine came in 2003 for us. And then later on, the first single vineyard dry came in 2009.
Wow.
And since we accumulated a lot of knowledges, because for the sweet wines, you got the knowledges, how to make them, where to select, how to make it. Of course, there are a lot of challenges, but to make a good dry wine, we didn't have the right, let's say, information and the right background during the generation. So since then, we accumulated a lot of knowledges. We had a lot of hurdles to take, actually, but the Tokaji dry wines became more and more good. And now I believe, and I'm sure that they reach an international standard where when we can put on the table a single vineyard or just a classic, let's say, vine region Furmin blend, which can actually rise with the others actually. So we are very proud, and we can see also that the dries of Tokaji, they became more and more popular. We can see that even on the US, on the UK market as well. Of course, we work a lot by trying to introduce our dry wines. And our label in the UK and US is the Oddity. Maybe a lot of your or people that are listening us, they heard about it. Is the Oddity Royal Furmint. It's a nice blend of Furmint, where half of the lots are barrel fermented and half of them are tank fermented, and later on we blend them, so it has a nice structure, a nice body with the fruitiness which comes from the tank made lots actually. And we did all these by keeping our sweet wines, the late harvest, and also wines still in focus actually. And today we can say that we produce around 40% dry wines and 60% are sweet wines on our production. So still a big focus on the sweet wines, of which the Osu wines represent more than a half actually.
Okay. Now, when you make the sweet wine, do you pass through the vineyard multiple times like a tree in Sauternes?
Yes. So Tokaji is very different to Sauterne, and it's very similar in a way because we both have botrytis, but the action is totally different. In Tokaji, we have a continental climate which influences our whole vegetation. Continental climate means um, more more hot conditions during summer, less precipitation. So if we compare us to the southern conditions, we have 3 times less precipitation than they do there in the Atlantic climate, and this gives the big difference between us. Of course, we are working with totally different grape varieties. Furmint and Harslevelu are late ripening grape varieties with very thick skin, actually. And then when botrytis arrives, we leave the botrytis and the passeurage, the drying of the berries, to go till the end. So when we start harvesting the berries, so we harvest berries, not bunches or clusters, part of bunches. So by berries, those berries already lost 80% of their total weight. So they are very concentrated. From outside, they look like brownish, violetish color and have very nice stripes of botrytis on it. So we collect them separately and we store them separately downstairs in the winery according to the generation, grape variety, and the vineyard. And we store them, let's say 2 months actually, till November, when we start to process them. And to process them, actually, you can't really direct press the berries. You need something to get out from the berries the whole flavors what are stored. And so what we do at that time or during the autumn, we harvest grapes for a so-called base wine. It's not a basic wine, it's a base wine what you use to macerate the osu berries in.
Okay.
So it's a wine with a higher alcohol potential, up to 14, 15 degrees. We keep them as musts during the autumn, and when we start the maceration of the berries, we start the fermentation for those base wines, base musts. And when they really explode to ferment around 4-6 degrees of alcohol, we add to the osu berries, and then we macerate together the berries with the fermenting must. It's a bit like maceration rouge. It's like the red grape maceration, actually. So we leave them to macerate together for 2 days. During these 2 days, the must penetrates the skin, goes into the berries, and start to ferment also inside the berries. So you will have a full extraction during those 2 days. And we also make some remontage. So we pump over to humidify the head of the tank where we do this maceration. At the end of the second day, we start the pressing. So that time we are able to press because they are soaked into this fermenting must. We press those berries, and we get a very rich fermenting must. And this is the must which will give us, if we leave the fermentation till the end, will give us the 5 or the 6 butonyos osu for us. So very briefly, this is the technology. It's an outstanding and technology which is made only in this wine region in the world. That's why Tokaji is considered a classic wine in the world, actually. And after the fermentation, we stop fermentation by cooling down sulfuring, and after fermentation, we send the wines down to our historical cellars, which are underground cellars, and they made there around 2 years of maturation in barrels. So 2 years.
Is it the
so
same
after,
process for?
Yeah.
Is it the same process for?
Is it? I couldn't pick up the end of the sentence.
Is it the same process for the essentia?
Yeah, essentia, it's a bit different because so we pick asu berries, we enter to the winery, we store them. I told you 1-2 months. All the vessels what we use to store the berries, on the bottom they have a grid, and down on the bottom they have a tap actually. So because of the gravity and their weight, they press each other and they release a very thick must, so which can go through the grid on the bottom of the vessel actually, and then we, by opening the tap, we can collect it, and that's the essentia.
Wow.
So that's the essentia from different grapes, from different varieties, from different single vineyards if you want, and we collect the essentia always, all days, all second days, because during the storage you need to keep dry the berries, and afterwards, still during the fermentation period, we retaste the essentia, and all the essentia which aren't rich enough, they go back during the fermentation period to the ossus in fermentation, 5 and 6 plutonios. We kept only the best ones, and afterwards the maturation of the essentia is done in glass jars down in the cellars actually. During their storage, because of their richness, they couldn't ferment actually, but the right top of the essentia, because of the dilution of the cellar air and the humidity, it always ferments a bit, so it's bubbling a bit. It's during the years, and we are continue tasting the essentia during these years, and according to the taste, we can release essentia after 3 years, 6 years, 8 years, or 10 years. It's always according the taste, according to our decision that, okay, this essentia is now right to be bottled, and then it follows a bottle maturation for the next period then afterwards.
So I have so many more questions, but we're at the half-hour mark, and I try to keep it somewhat short. But can I ask you how, historically and currently, what foods do you eat with the sweet wine? Because Americans are sometimes stumped. They just think cheese or dessert, but I imagine your culture has many more options.
Well, historically, the sweet wines of Tokaji were served at the end of the meals, of course. But during the last 30 years, we tried to rediscover the taste of the sweet wines. And we are fighting about this stigmatization that sweet wine and dessert and nothing else. So we can easily offer it with foie gras, for example. You can easily use late harvest or osu wines with let's say spicy, sour and sweet Chinese, Indian cuisine with Asian foods goes very, very well. Let's tell you, I like, especially with a 5 puttonyos or a 6 puttonyos, you have a pork knuckle, and then you have a bit of essentia drops or a bit of honey on the top of the knuckle, the skin, and then you put it in the oven, and it became crunchy, and the whole meat is delicious, and then you can have a right osu wine with high acidity and the good sweetness, and goes just perfectly with.
Wow, that sounds insane. Just yeah. Before we go, would you turn the camera around? There's a lot of new people on here who would like to see, and just kind of give us the lay of the land again, the hills and the mountains and the forest one more time.
Yeah, so this is so we can see there the Zemplén Mountains, which are the mountains from north, which are bordering the vineyard, the vine region from north. Tokaji Mount, and on the other side of the Tokaji Mount, we have the rivers, which borders the wine region from southeast, and from southwest, we have the Great Hungarian Plain, which from where actually we get the good weather actually for this wine region. And I can also show you, if we go a bit to the vineyard.
And while we're there, you mentioned a reddish soil. What was the word you used to describe the soil?
So it's a reddish clay.
Oh,
I'm coming a bit closer to the soil.
Yeah, wow.
And it's mainly because of the mangan and iron oxides, which are in the structure of this soil. So it's quite stony. These stones, as everywhere, accumulates heat during daytime and gave it back during nighttime by making less fluctuating the temperature. And we have a furmin plantation right here. We are after the flowering period, just after. We can see very nice berries already.
Love it.
On the bunches. So it looks promising, the harvest. Still a long way to go. And next to the older plantation, we have young vines here. Planted this year in the spring, also furmint. And yeah.
Zoltán, I have to thank you so much. This has been so informative. I have loved your wine for so long, so I'm really, really thankful you took the time to show us around.
But it was a pleasure for me as well to share with you all this information.
Thank you so much. And please thank Charlie for me. And it's just been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You have a good day.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.